some of my fellow YouTubers in the fish fam are aware that I'm moving towards subtropical species of fish and also dwarf shrimp, largely because they don't require a heater. They prefer cooler temperatures. Heaters are very difficult to hide in an aquascape, and I'm more and more interested in plants, hardscape, those aspects of the aquarist hobby. And for some time now I've been interested in acquiring some zebra Danios, but the zebra Danio variant of Danio rerio are quite common in the hobby. I've seen those since I was a kid in the 70s. A newer variant is the leopard Danio, which have spots rather than stripes. I was in my local pet store last weekend and I noticed that they had some leopard Danios in the zebra Danio tank. They also had some albino variants. So I told the clerk that I wanted all of the leopard Danios out of the tank. She caught all 6 of them for me. The smallest is quite emaciated and has some fin damage. I didn't think it would make it, but it seems to be doing fine. I haven't seen any disease in these fish after having them for a week, and I believe with time fin damage should heal up. So I'm very excited to have some of these little fish in a 10-gallon. Previously I was using this tank just to culture plants, but it wasn't working out because I tried to rid those plants of some ephemeral wispy type algae by soaking them in alum solution, and unfortunately that killed many of the plants. Even after 24 hours, that treatment can destroy some species, particularly Bacopa. I lost all the Bacopa that I put through that treatment. I've also noticed that driftwood tends to encourage algae, particularly blackbeard algae, but many types of algae feed off of the nutrients that the wood exudes as it deteriorates and rots. So for this scape I decided to go with some pieces of slate, and it's quite easy to stand those up in coal dust, which is what I'm using in most of my tanks at this point. It caps compost very well, and compost seems to have all the nutrients the plants require, so I don't have to dose or add root tabs to a scape. This tank is on the lower level of a double 10-gallon stand, so shooting the aquascaping of this tank would have been problematic. I decided to go ahead and do that off camera and share the results with my viewers. Here's a view of the left side of the tank. If you look closely behind the plants, you can see how I've propped up the pieces of slate by putting them in a T formation. That tends to work very well in the coal dust. Over here on the right side of the tank, you can see more of the little pieces of slate that I've used to prop up the larger ones. And of course I have added a sponge on the intake of the hang on the back filter to prevent fry from perishing in the filter. After selling off most of the Java moss and salvinia from this tank, and robbing the tank of bacopa and dwarf sagittaria, perhaps some rotala as well, I've also rid the tank of Hygrophila corymbosa, but I found Hygrophila corymbosa dwarf on offer at my local pet store today, so I couldn't resist that. Being a dwarf plant, I'm not sure how tall it will grow, but I wanted to add it to the foreground. Perhaps it won't get too tall. Definitely should fill in the empty space in this tank. I also decided to remove the adult white cloud mountain minnow from this tank and put them in my 120 gallon tank, which is now a cold water tank. It's basically a cold tank for my cherry shrimp. And white clouds, they may devour the occasional shrimplet, but I tend to keep them very well fed, so they probably won't devour too many shrimp. I believe that after removing the heater, and in particular the true Siamese algae eaters from the 120, the shrimp colony in that large space should really take off. So if a white cloud devours a few shrimplets, well, that's just nature. I'm using my extra long planting tongs for the planting of this 20 gallon tall tank. They're not my favorite planting tongs. My favorite have triangular tips and really are a joy to use in a lower tank. A shorter tank. But for my purposes here, I want to stick my whole arm in the tank. So just carefully use the giant tongs. I removed all of the adult and juvenile white cloud mountain minnow from the 20 tall tank. Now, when all the fry get large enough to also go into the 120 gallon, I hope to move my leopard Danio into this tank, and hopefully they can breed here. After nearly a week, there's been very little melting on the Hygrophila corymbosa dwarf. I poked a few of the leaves into the substrate where they can decompose and add to the fertilizer in this tank. But as they grow and fill in, I believe they'll make a nice addition to this tank.